Hey, brother,
Hear me now.
brother dog. Know me, understand.
Welcome to the Sargassum Podcast. My name's Robbie Thigpen.
I'm Francisca Elmer.
And I am Mar Fernandez, and we are your hosts for today. We're gonna share with you the latest ideas and solutions about sargassum, which has become an international challenge.
How was everybody's week? How's the weather down in South Carolina, Robbie?
You can just say, and if you just say the Carolinas, that might be easier to keep it up from. But
All right.
I'm down here in the low country of South Carolina, and well, we finally got a break in the weather and all. I mean, I've been complaining about how cloudy it's been for the last 10 days from the Hurricane Eta, but simultaneously, I really don't have much to complain about. I got a lot of friends in Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize were impacted greatly by the flooding and all. There wasn't as much wind damage as was anything else, but the flooding was catastrophic. You know, tens of thousands of people being displaced with homes still underwater. And so I can say the weather's nice for me, and the weather's nicer in those countries as well where my friends are. But there's still a lot of people without homes because of the bad weather they had. And we just need to be thinking about those guys and women and all my indigenous brothers and sisters down in Central America while we're doing all this stuff.
Did you also hear what's going on in Peru at the moment? We just got back all our equipment back from our last year's expedition in Peru. And I mean, now hearing all the political insecurity, instability that is happening there at the moment, I am also worried about all my friends, also scientists that are there, all the samples we left there from our experiment. I don't know what's going to happen with all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of turmoil in the world right now. And we just need to be hoping for a better future for everyone.
Yeah, I think being in Switzerland, people complain here about insecurities and having to wear masks, but we are very lucky with getting a lot of support from the government for all kinds of people. And we have to also recognize that that's not the case in most places in the world.
Yeah, I mean, here in Germany, northern Germany, most people are complaining all the time about the gray weather. And I mean, like, well, if that's the only thing you have to complain about, then we're doing fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, and here in Switzerland, even now, we had really good weather the last few days. Normally it's very gray in November, but we've had very sunny weather, and I've even been able to be in a t-shirt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yes. So our guest today is also living somewhere where the weather should be pretty nice. He lives in Miami. Robbie, do you want to do the introduction?
Yeah. My name is Lowell. I am a PhD candidate at Florida International University. I work with my advisor, Dr. Ligia Criado-Vides. My research is on interactions between marine macrophytes and invertebrates with special emphasis on sargassum once they land. I also happen to be the manager of the International Sargassum Network listserv and the manager of the citizen science program that's run by EpiCollect 5.
Awesome. So nice to have you here, and I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, welcome.
Yes. Bienvenidos. Oh wait, you're not Spanish. You're from the Philippines.
I know a little bit of Spanish.
How do you say welcome in Tagalog?
Tagalog? Okay, I know very little, even less Tagalog than Spanish.
I would thought you'd know hello or welcome. I'll try later.
Yeah.
And so what's our first question today?
I will start with the key question of our podcast. So this is a question we ask to everyone that we invite to this podcast. And the question is, what is sargassum for you? And now I don't want a description of what sargassum is. I want, what is it for you? What does it mean for you, sargassum?
What is sargassum to me? One hell of an accident would be my answer to that. When I started my PhD back in 2016, I thought I was going to do seagrasses. And at least half of my chapters involve seagrasses, red algae, amphipods, everything underwater. And then 2 years ago, sargassum started hitting some of my study sites. And then when Ligia was telling me about sargassum, I was like, hey, this is a good opportunity to jump to citizen science. And realizing that, I jumped in. I started my citizen science project. And unlike my dissertation, my citizen science sargassum thing started out as a side project, which later made its way as a very minor part of my dissertation. And the more I look into sargassum, it's like, ah, crap, there's invertebrates here too. And I don't know if anyone's looking at these invertebrates, so I guess, I don't know, I'll just tack that into my dissertation. So what sargassum is, it's just one weird, happy accident that kind of made its way into my life. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, as you began your stuff, I guess, working with Thalassie and Syringodium and all that stuff. And those are, you know, keystone ecosystems of the Florida and the Greater Caribbean Basin. As a matter of fact, every commercially important marine species spends some phase of its life in those seagrass ecosystems. Is sargassum like that in any way?
In the northern Sargasso Sea, yes. Sargassum in that area has been nicknamed the Golden Rainforest. And so you'll be able to find very largely endemic species of fish and invertebrates that you can find nowhere else on this planet.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of these fishes and invertebrates, they, you know, over evolutionary time, they basically accustomed to adapting to sargassum. They ended up looking like the sargassum leaves on frogs and can be able to camouflage their ways into their systems. Sea turtles love this stuff. At least in the Sargasso Sea, the sea turtles will go in once they get out of the beaches and kind of use that sargassum in the Sargasso Sea as a refuge from predators. Right, and there's at least the sargassum that's been causing the blooms. There also have been evidence of invertebrates living on them. You can find a lot of hydroids and other sessile fauna, but my impression is that area in the Caribbean where the sargassum is at is a lot less studied. So there's a gap that definitely needs to be addressed. And how does that invertebrate community down in the Caribbean compare to the one in the Sargasso Sea? That's something that I'm not even touching on, but I think it's a really important link to address.
Nice. You know, I know a little bit about seagrasses because my research in the Caribbean started out working with marine arthropod, the Caribbean spiny lobster. You know, and the, you know, that's a very important hunting ground, you know, for this predatory animal, and all that's, they spend their lives going there looking for snails and stuff to eat. However, the lobster also spends a phase of its life in the pelagic and all. So I kind of got two questions. One, tell us a little bit more about your amphipods and all in coastal systems and all. But are you finding any philosoma larvae of any predatory species like the Caribbean spiny lobster in any of this seagrass?
Okay, so it's very important to understand that I'm studying the invertebrates living on sargassum once a sargassum lands. So this is very different from the sargassum that, you know, still lives in the pelagic areas, right? And one of the things that should be the take home is that the invertebrate community in that landed sargassum are primarily terrestrial in nature. The most marine animals you can find there are probably dead epiphytes, like the hydroids and the worms, and amphipods, which I was watching a webinar by Joe Serafi and his team at UM. These amphipods are probably from the genus Mexorchestia, which are under the family Tilitridae, so they're basically sandhoppers. They're the only known terrestrial amphipods, crustaceans that we know. And they can number in thousands, especially if you have very high amounts of biomass of sargassum coming onto shores. Most of the other invertebrates were found were insects. So larvae of soldier flies, beetle larvae can be nested in the sargassum. Beetles, flies, even we found springtails, which are even smaller than some of the invertebrates I work with. So all this sargassum, once it lands and brings all this biomass and nutrients, it's basically free real estate for these small invertebrate fauna.
Nice. So do they actually eat the sargassum?
That's one of the things I'm trying to study right now, is I want to see if these invertebrates are going to be effective detritivores of the sargassum. Joe Sarafi's work, I think he was able to find that amphipods do eat these rotting sargassum leaves. And so I hypothesize that all of these invertebrates, as they're, kind of making their home in sargassum, they're probably going to, at least to a very, very small extent, actually eat the sargassum as an ecosystem service. Now, given all this biomass, I don't think bugs themselves can handle this kind of mess. But I think having that dietary link through, controlled experiments and dietary analyses like stable isotopes and gut contents can provide an important trophic link that's been overlooked. Because perhaps some of these shorebirds that, probably eat these invertebrates, they probably see this and kind of, first thing you know, it's kind of like a buffet of invertebrates, right? Yeah.
Wait. And so this is on land, but I guess you've also seen sargassum floating in the ocean. And have you ever had the chance to swim or dive with or below sargassum? And how does that feel like? How is it?
I had a couple of events where I have swam with sargassum. One is in Crandon Park, and as I know, for most sargassum influxes, the water turns pretty brown and ugly. Surprisingly, when I were to pick up some of these sargassum, you can still find sargassum crabs and some motile invertebrates that haven't died from the anoxic conditions yet. But I have scuba dived 2 years ago when I was still in my rookie training stages, and I managed to be under the sargassum farther away from Miami. And I've, as would have it, there's definitely larger fish that are using it as feeding ground from the sargassum. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, well, it's a favorite hangout for dolphin. And I think a lot of the people I know that go fish for those kind of things they're looking for the sargassum patches because they'll troll past that and give them a nice big fish there. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting stuff. But I want you to tell us a little bit about your citizen science project and the app we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So the app that I'm using for my citizen science project, so first of all, my citizen science program is called Sargassum Watch. It uses a third-party app called EpiCollect 5, and EpiCollect 5 is this open source app made by the Imperial College of London in the UK. So the EpiCollect 5 app allows potential citizen science managers to kind of make their own citizen science project. So I ended up making my Sargassum Watch project through EpiCollect 5. And by looking for potential collaborators, I can get a network of volunteers to help me collect photos of the sites and species of the sargassum where it's impacting their local coastal areas. So a lot of help that I got for the citizen science project, for example, are from sea turtle monitoring groups. I have one group in Broward County of Florida, and I have another small group in Grand Cayman that started helping this past summer. And so through that, we were able to get 2 years worth of data. I think as of today, we've had over 2,000 data points, 2,000 observations. The vast majority of them are in South Florida, of course, because that's where my strongest network is at. But we are starting to expand to other areas of the Caribbean, and we hope to expand a lot more on that.
And how was it to set up this app? Was it hard to do? Does it cost anything to do this type of thing?
So compared to other citizen science apps that I've tried to pilot over the years, I found EpiCollect 5 to be the most intuitive for both the managers like myself, as well as the volunteer observations. EpiCollect 5 is free, and as with a lot of citizen science apps, a good majority of them are free and open source, thankfully. I've made 5 different projects related to EpiCollect 5 because what I found is that some folks are readily committed to collect an entire worksheet's worth of data, while others probably just want to grab 3 pics and go. And so I want to be mindful of these volunteers' time. So that's why I would make different versions of that same project. And recently we also, start to make the citizen science app in different languages, right? So we have an English version with a comprehensive worksheet and the easy data sheet. We made a Spanish version with those same versions, and we're starting with a volunteer translation team to make a French version, right? So we hope to kind of use those different tactics to try to reach as broad an audience as we can get.
Mhm. And so the app, the way I understand it, is the data is available not just to you, but to everybody who wants to see it, right?
Mhm.
And has it actually helped you in your science? And do you know if there's other scientists who use the data? And what kind of stuff have they been able to do with this data?
That's a very good question. So all of my data is so far has been open source and easy to access. If anyone who wants to use the data, they can go ahead and download it, as long as they give me and the lab credit. That's all we ask. For me, it was a little tricky trying to, put an orange and compare it to an apple. And so what I've been trying to initially use my citizen science data for is to just track spatial temporal variability of the sargassum landings. And with my team of undergrads, we found, for example, that Grand Cayman, being more in the Caribbean area of terms of latitude, they are more susceptible to higher accumulations of sargassum than Florida, which is a lot more north. So we're able to detect different variability in where the sargassum is landing and how much it is accumulated. Now, something that I wanted to do relevant to my dissertation is because these sargassum influxes are bringing in potential food and habitat, is to also kind of estimate the amount of invertebrates that are using the sargassum as habitat, right? And a hypothesis that I'm testing right now is, of course, sargassum being a very seasonal phenomenon, that is going to also bring a seasonal variation in the habitat availability of these invertebrates, and that's going to affect the diversity and abundance of these invertebrates that would try to use sargassum as a habitat or as a food source. And so I have another team that's looking, what kinds of invertebrates are living in there, what are the microhabitat conditions, is sargassum kind of like this really cool air-conditioned mansion, or if it's like a haunted greenhouse, it's probably frying and roasting these invertebrates rather than just keeping them nice and cool as they please. So I think in terms of the greater scope of the network, I have seen my citizen science data being used a lot by presentations. There has been a lot of proposals to somehow integrate the citizen science data to help refine satellite imagery models to try to detect and forecast these arrival of the sargassum influxes, right? And we had a workshop, I think 2 months ago, where there's definitely some talk on how we're going to integrate that sort of data. I do hope that all this talk will certainly lead to collaboration and action, but I think for now we'll just have to wait and see. Because this is definitely something that cannot be done by one person. It involves collaborations and networks and a widely coordinated effort to, in a way, kind of marry and integrate these different methods to best predict and forecast and model how these sargassum blue dynamics are going to come about, because this phenomenon is going to be here to stay as it looks.
Yes.
So,
May I ask you a question about what you were just talking about, please? First of all, I want to make sure I understand this correctly. So what you're saying is that when we have these huge beachings of the sargassum, that increases the carrying capacity for terrestrial invertebrates.
Mhm.
So we have a bloom, if you will, of terrestrial invertebrates. So there's more food for shorebirds.
Yeah.
Is this coming at a time, for example, during nesting time, where you have a higher survivability rate that becomes dependent upon this excess amount of food? And then when the season for the, all these extra invertebrates go away, do we see are you seeing or even thought about looking at, is there a decrease in shorebird population or fatalities because of the decrease in food supply?
That's a very good question. I don't know that. I would love to learn how to make that linkage between the invertebrates and birds. And it's kind of a disconnect because we usually hear, the highest diversity of birds coming into Miami is during the winter because of this large migration of migratory birds. And the sargassum is coming around during summer, where at best, probably local insectivorous birds are probably taking advantage of that resource. But I cannot tell you beyond that. I think that's going to require, collaboration with someone who knows their shorebirds very well, and to kind of make, for example, a stable isotope study or some other study that kind of links those dietary linkages between invertebrates, bird, and sargassum together. So.
Sounds like a real good postdoc project for you.
Yes. Robbie, at one point we are going to interview Debbie Bartlett. And when she came to South Caicos, I was studying sargassum and she came from the UK. And I'm a marine person. So when I study sargassum, I'm mostly in the water looking at seagrass and how it affects the seagrass. And she was all interested in the invertebrates and the birds. And I got to see sargassum from a completely different perspective. And I tried to get her in the water so she could see my perspective as well.
Nice.
Nice.
I also have a question about your app. So right now is mostly land focused, meaning most of the observations you get are from people on a beach that take a picture and send it to you. And I was wondering, what are your plans to expand this to the sea? So maybe talking to fishermen or whatever, so that they also send you these pictures, or I don't know, do you have any plans in that direction?
Oh my God, very good question. So I personally have problems trying to figure out who to reach out in terms of expanding it offshore. And I guess I could give a shout out. I know, Fran, you've been working quite a bit on reaching out to yacht owners and sailors to actually try to collect that data offshore. And I heavily appreciate that because a challenge for processing the data, I guess I don't know if we want to make that kind of segue. What's great about collecting sargassum data onshore in terms of the pictures is that we use a class system to kind of categorize the accumulation level. So, a level 0 accumulation level means, the beach is really clean, versus a level 5, which is our highest setting, which is, large influxes of sargassum, anoxic, a lot of decomposition, brown water, et cetera, et cetera. But then something that I'm trying to figure out, I'm struggling with a thought experiment myself, is what if you see a large biomass of sargassum, but it hasn't landed yet? That's still important information. I still do believe it should be collected. Just maybe we could use that data to answer a completely different set of questions, or kind of tweak it to kind of get an estimate or prediction what's that accumulation level is going to be once it makes its way onto the beach. So even though this citizen science program has developed a long way, there's definitely room for improvement and new directions. And I'm definitely open to what those new directions can be and what they could look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and me and a colleague, Catherine Jadot, are actually just applied for a grant to do an EpiCollect app or extension to to work with sailors, because we do want to take pictures of those mats offshore for the prediction models. And also we want to see if there's any turtles or anything else living in there. There is already efforts to do this. So sailing communities are in contact and working with mostly the University of Mississippi. They have a website where you can put in information, and then the University of Mississippi and I think another university in Florida are then using that information for their prediction models. So there's a little bit of that going on, but I don't think too many people know about it. And we hope to, with an app and some advertising and outreach, to make it more known and easier for people to use.
Yeah.
You know, talking about working with commercial fishermen, I know a guy, Wes Merton is his name, and he's working with Corphania Hippurus dolphin, and he's working with commercial, sports fishermen and guides from all the way down from Trinidad all the way up to Georgetown, South Carolina. Maybe working further north, but I know he works this far north because I know some of the fishermen that are working with him, and they're cooperating on this big dolphin project he's got. And he might could get you involved in some of the fishermen that he's working with, and out there, you know, doing this stuff. And I'll put you in touch with him and see if y'all can work something out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lowell, my last question. I'm sure our listeners want to know how they can get involved. So who can use the app? Does it have to be a turtle group, or can it be a single person? And how do they get involved the easiest way?
Very good question. The EpiCollect 5 can be downloaded through iOS or Android. It's a very flexible app. I would highly recommend, if you have the time, to download the Sargassum Watch Citizen Science Project within the EpiCollect 5. But if that's an issue, we also have the EZ version, literally the letters EZ followed by Sargassum, and that is an abridged version of the Sargassum Watch project. And I have equivalents for Spanish, which are ready so far. That's Monitoreo de Sargassum. That is an equivalent of the Sargassum Watch. And Sargasso Fácil is the Spanish equivalent to the English easy version. All right, so we do have the Citizen Science Project ready. Anyone could use it. You don't have to be in a volunteer group. And whenever you go out to the beach, even if there is no sargassum, even if you walk in and see a really clean beach, get that data anyway, because absence of sargassum is still data. And we can definitely use it to better make estimations of our models and predictions and etc. So.
All right, sounds really exciting. I used the app when I was living in South Caicos, also to just collect my own data, and it was definitely very easy to use and very fun as well.
Nice.
Excellent. So do we have any more questions for Lowell today? Well, Lowell, thank you so much for being with us. I enjoyed this talk. I learned one or two little things, and learned a couple things made me grin. So I really appreciate that, especially and all. And you know, we hope to hear more about your research in the future. And yeah, just thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Well, we're gonna let you go for right now, and we'll be in contact with you, and we're gonna talk about what we just learned. And once again, thanks.
Thanks,
All right.
Lowell.
Thanks, Lowell.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Wow, that was kind of nice.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
That's a pretty cool app that he developed there, no? And it's amazing that anyone can contribute to science right now. This is amazing.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think on the video and probably on the website for him, we're going to have some links to, so people can go and download these things too. So that's going to be really good to have available.
Yes, and also for him and other scientists, like he said, he has over 2,000 pictures imagine how much time it would take if you had to go out to the beach regularly to go get those pictures. And these people who already go out there to check on turtles can do this within 3 minutes, saving so much time, and get to do some exciting research on the side, which is super awesome.
Yeah, imagine how much money you save in terms of research, right? To get all those data points would cost a fortune, and this way you get it for free. So this is really...
Yeah, well, the thing is too, I mean, those all are good and well points, but you also get a different perspective.
Awesome.
When, like Franziska was talking a minute ago about the lady was interested in the birds and stuff, and that gave her a different perspective. When you're working with different kind of scientists and even just citizens, the perspective you're going to get is their perspective, and seeing it from a different perspective can sometimes, illuminate some really important aspects that you may have otherwise overlooked. So I think that's a very important aspect of that.
Yeah.
And I like that he has 2 different versions for people who are very nerdy and science interested, and people who just want to take a few pictures. So there's 2 different levels of getting involved, which is really cool.
Yeah, it would be nice when he expands the app towards the ocean, and then I can see fishermen or scientists or whatever taking pictures with a GoPro in the water, and then putting app on that. That would be cool.
Well, I'm waiting on the GoPro coming with a big dolphin coming up behind a hook, trolling beside the sargassum. That's the photo I'm looking for.
Well,
And,
Robbie, when I was living in South Caicos and teaching there, we would study sargassum there, and there was one spot we would go every week to clear a little patch to see how much got there. We would weigh it, and I was there with a few students, and one of the students screamed shark. So we looked out into the water. We were all on the beach, all marine people, and there was this hammerhead shark, which was chasing, I think there were 2 or 3 different eagle rays, and it actually, like, we saw the eagle ray jumping in the air and being eaten by the shark. And then once the shark left, and the shark got really close to shore, so we saw it was a hammerhead shark. And then we took out the eagle ray with the bite mark onto the beach to take pictures and to have a look at it. And it was definitely one of the most amazing experiences I had in my life, seeing this interaction in the sargassum. Like, there was sargassum floating in the water there, and the shark kind of used it to help him forage or predate on the eagle ray.
Yeah,
Do you think anyone has had this kind of interactions, like sargassum as a forest, right? As a place where bigger animals hide and then attack their prey? That's amazing.
Yeah, well, apparently they're adapting.
Yeah, we had some videos, and I sent it to SarkNet email at that point because it was very exciting.
Cool.
Nice. Well, that's been our Sargassum podcast for this week. Thank you for joining us, and we're going to be interviewing somebody else next week. I'm not quite sure who that is right now, but it's going to be an exciting interview just like this one was, and we look forward to seeing you then. And till then, y'all have a good rest of your week. Thank you much.
Yeah, have a nice week. Bye.
Have a nice week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in today and learning with us from our guest about sargassum.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please consider supporting us financially by becoming a Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can support us and take part in an exclusive monthly Zoom happy hour for Patreons, where you can network with our podcast guests and other sargassum enthusiasts.
This podcast was produced by Marcel van der Kamp, and your hosts today were Robbie Tingen, Franziska Elmer, and Mar Fernandez. We will be back next week with another exciting guest.
Do you want to find out more about what our guest talked about today? Check our show notes for links to the documents and websites. The music in this podcast is from the song Demo Pray by Drizzle Roadrunner, an artist from Roatan. You can listen to the full song at the end of this episode. If you enjoy his music, then please follow him on Spotify and YouTube, where you can find more of his music. But for now, here is Demo Pray by Drizzle Roadrunner.
Hey, brother, hear me now. Brother dog, now me understand. Now for them no want to see we get nothing. That's why them a pray and always front and star. Now for them no want to see we get nothing. That's why them a pray. Now for them a pray, them a pray, them a pray. Me no gain progress. Now for them a pray, them a pray. Me no reap success. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no reap success. So me tell them, yeah, promises come and me no take that. Only if it come from Jah, I'll accept that. Now for them, me put me trust in and give me setback. Yo, select that, we'll and pull up that. Tell some wicked that bad mind, me no fear them. Anytime them cheat and chat, me no hear them. Me dash a few hard soak for the queer them. Me dash a few hard soak, tell them where them. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no reap success. So me tell them, yeah, yes me know me have a lot of fake friends, but me never woulda thought me woulda have fake family. So me tell them straight, me no trust them. Me no trust you and me no trust him. Fake friend lost bad mind in a real life. Star me no rate that, star me no rate that. But me real for me woulda bust a million shot in a real life. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no reap success. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no reap success. So me tell them, yeah. Screaming out loud, me woulda tell them fi go look alike, but them a hate and grudge and creep on mine. Them a move like Judas, them a move like Judas. Plus, everybody have a life to live, so me give one rascal who a try judge me. Let them chit and chat, so what them want fi say, cause none of them out there nah feed me. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no reap success. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray, them a pray, me no reap success. How's your music? Oh, five-star production 1101. Them a pray, me no reap success.